They say the emperor's heart was the most dangerous battlefield in China, and 3,000 women were forced to fight on it, not with swords, but with beauty, wit, and ruthless cunning. Behind the crimson walls of the Forbidden City, love wasn't a gift. It was a game with only two possible endings: ascend to unthinkable power or vanish without a trace. Every morning, the air inside the harem was heavy with perfume and fear. Silk gowns rustled through marble corridors as young women rehearsed their smiles, their voices, their every gesture, all for the chance of a single night in the emperor's chambers. But to become his favorite meant painting a target on your own back. Rivals plotted in shadows. Servants whispered rumors that could kill. A cup of tea might soothe your throat or stop your heart. These weren't random acts of jealousy. The harem was a political weapon, a chessboard where every concubine was a piece in a game controlled by the emperor and the families who placed their daughters here to gain influence. History remembers the wars fought on battlefields, but few speak of the wars fought in silk-draped rooms, lit by candlelight and poisoned by ambition. And in the court of one emperor, these games of love turned deadly, a secret arena where the losers disappeared and the victors learned that power in the Forbidden City always came with a price. Because here, to win his heart, you first had to survive it. The story takes us to the heart of imperial China, to an era when the emperor was not just a ruler, but the living embodiment of the heavens. His will was law, his word divine, and his harem, a shimmering fortress of beauty, was both his private sanctuary and a symbol of his absolute power. In the dynasties of Ming and Qing, it was not unusual for an emperor to command a harem of hundreds, even thousands of women. This wasn't simply indulgence, it was politics woven in silk. Every concubine represented a strategic alliance, the daughter of a noble family, a reward to a loyal general, or a political olive branch extended to a rival clan. The larger the harem, the greater the emperor's perceived dominance, not only over his own court, but over the empire itself. Entering the harem was no accident. Girls were chosen through a rigorous selection process that could rival any royal exam. Beauty was only the beginning. Grace, voice, manners, even the way a girl poured tea could be the deciding factor between a life of luxury and a life in obscurity. Some were trained from childhood for this singular purpose, groomed by ambitious families who dreamed of seeing their bloodline tied to the dragon throne. But behind the red lacquered gates, these women didn't just belong to the emperor, they belonged to a system. A hierarchy as strict as the imperial court itself, where a single step upward could change a family's fate, and a single misstep could erase a name from history. In this world, beauty was currency, obedience was survival, and the price of failure was unthinkable. Inside the Forbidden City, the harem was a world within a world, an intricate, silent empire ruled not by soldiers, but by beauty, status, and silent warfare. At the top of this hierarchy sat the empress, the only woman permitted to stand beside the emperor in official ceremonies. Below her were the favored concubines, a handful of women who had captured his attention, and, with it, unimaginable influence. Beneath them, countless others waited in limbo, newly selected girls, low-ranking consorts, and those who had once been chosen but had since faded into the background. Life here followed rules carved as sharply as the palace stones. No one left without permission. No one spoke directly to the emperor unless summoned. Even letters to family were censored. The outer world disappeared, replaced by a carefully curated existence of silks, etiquette lessons, and endless waiting. For the favored few, privilege was intoxicating. Lavish gowns embroidered with gold thread, private pavilions scented with rare incense, a retinue of servants eager to please. But power drew enemies, like lantern light draws moths. A whispered rumor, a misplaced gift, or a perceived insult could topple a favorite overnight. For the rest, life was a gilded prison. Days bled into nights, marked only by the sound of distant court music, or the shuffle of silk slippers in the corridors. Loneliness festered in these shadows, feeding quiet rivalries. The harem was a place where every smile was calculated, every friendship conditional, and trust was a currency too expensive to afford. Here, survival wasn't about winning the emperor's love. It was about avoiding the daggers hidden behind a rival's perfect bow. In the emperor's harem, affection was never just affection, it was a weapon. Every glance from the dragon throne was a silent decree, elevating one woman and condemning another. And so began the games of love, contests so subtle, yet so lethal, they could rival any war. Rivals struck not with blades, but with whispers. A single rumor that a concubine had insulted the empress, or spoken out of turn, could erase her from the emperor's thoughts forever. Sometimes, the attacks were more direct. A tray of candied fruit laced with poison, a silk scarf accidentally left at the edge of a koi pond, where an unsuspecting rival might slip and never surface again. Entertainment for the emperor often became a battlefield. Banquets and evening performances were high stakes. Showcases of flawless dance could secure weeks of favor, while a misstep could mark the beginning of exile to the cold, damp, lonely palaces. Women rehearsed for hours, perfecting not just their songs and movements, but the art of catching his eye without seeming desperate. The games didn't end with the emperor's presence. Alliances formed in the shadows, pitting cliques against each other. Servants were bribed to deliver secret messages or sabotage a rival's makeup before an imperial audience. Even gifts to the emperor could backfire. If a rival whispered that the jade carving you offered was flawed, it might be interpreted as an insult to His Majesty. In this silent war, victory meant living in the warm glow of imperial favor. Defeat meant being swallowed by the palace's endless corridors, forgotten before the candles in your chamber burned out. To the outside world, the emperor's affection for a concubine might seem like romance, an intimate choice of the heart. Inside the harem, everyone knew better. Love was never just love, it was strategy. Every night the emperor chose a woman, he was also choosing her family, her allies, and the political message their union sent across the empire. A single evening in the emperor's chambers could elevate an entire clan. A father might gain a government post, brothers could secure military commands, and the family name would carry new weight in the capital. But with that power came peril. If the favored concubine fell from grace, her entire family could tumble with her, stripped of titles, banished, or quietly erased from public life. Some families treated their daughters as weapons, training them in poetry, music, and court etiquette not for love, but for influence. Others bribed eunuchs and servants to keep their daughters in the emperor's sight. Even the empress herself was often a political appointment chosen less for beauty and more for the alliances her marriage secured. The emperor used these dynamics to his advantage. By rotating his favor between different factions, he kept potential rivals balanced and dependent, but the stakes were high. A careless choice could tip the balance of power, incite jealousy, or even spark conspiracies against him. Within this gilded cage, the language of love was written in coded glances and calculated gifts, each move a step in an invisible dance, where the music was set by politics, not passion. In the harem, a woman's greatest fear was not rejection, it was obscurity. Falling from the emperor's favor rarely happened with drama. More often it was a slow fading, like a candle burning down to its wick, until one day the light was gone. For some, this meant exile to the cold palace's remote, damp courtyards at the farthest edge of the forbidden city. The name sounded poetic, but the reality was brutal. These rooms were unheated, their walls covered in frost during the winter. Once sent there, a woman could live out the rest of her life in silence, her name erased from court records, her footsteps echoing in deserted corridors. Others suffered swifter fates. A sudden illness could sweep through the harem, striking only one victim. The official reports would mention fever, but whispers among the servants spoke of poisoned tea or a silk sash used in the dead of night. There were also the honorable endings, forced suicides, ordered to protect the emperor's dignity or to appease political enemies. Even the most powerful concubines were not safe. History tells of women who once sat at the emperor's side, commanding wealth and influence, only to die alone and forgotten. The moment the emperor's gaze shifted, they became ghosts, living reminders that in the Forbidden City, beauty had an expiration date. In the end, the harem's greatest truth was this: winning the emperor's heart was never the end of the game. It was only the beginning of a countdown no one could escape. Long after the palace gates closed on the last imperial harem, its shadows continued to stretch across Chinese culture. The stories of these women, their beauty, rivalries, and tragic fates were carried forward in whispers, poems, and painted scrolls. Over time, fact and fiction blended until the truth became as elusive as the women themselves. In literature, the harem was often romanticized, a place of silk-clad beauties, strolling through moonlit gardens, playing zithers, and writing love poems for the emperor. But the reality was far less tender. Between the lines of these tales are hints of the political schemes, the silent battles, and the price every woman paid for her place near the throne. The fascination never faded. Modern television dramas and films have resurrected these stories, drawing millions of viewers into worlds of ornate costumes, jeweled hairpins, and palace intrigue. Some shows lean into the fantasy, painting the harem as a place of endless luxury. Others dare to show the darker truths, the loneliness, the manipulation, and the quiet cruelty behind the beauty. Why does it still captivate us? Perhaps because the harem mirrors the most dangerous parts of human nature: ambition, desire, jealousy, magnified inside a gilded cage. It's a reminder that power, no matter how beautifully dressed, always has a price. And though the emperors are gone, the myth of the harem endures. It lives in the art, in the stories passed down through generations, and in the lingering question that haunts every tale. In a world where love is a game of survival, would you dare to play? In the emperor's harem, everything could change with a single glance. One night of favor could lift a woman to dizzying heights of power. One whisper of suspicion could send her plunging into obscurity. But here's the truth: no one dared to speak aloud. Not even the emperor's gaze was always his own. Behind him, ministers, the empress, and powerful families pulled invisible strings, turning the so-called games of love into something far more dangerous. Every smile could be a trap. Every gift could be a test. In this world, beauty was a weapon, affection was currency, and survival depended on knowing when to act and when to disappear. And yet, even as the centuries pass, the Forbidden City still holds its secrets. Its courtyards and gardens may now be silent, but the echoes remain of silk slippers on stone, of hushed conspiracies in candlelit rooms, of laughter masking fear. The story of the emperor's harem isn't just about love or even power. It's about the cost of stepping into a game where the rules are never written and the prize is never truly yours. Because in the Forbidden City, winning the emperor's heart was never the end. It was only the beginning of the most dangerous chapter of your life. And if you think this was the most shocking story Imperial China has to offer, wait until you hear about the emperor who refused a harem entirely and nearly lost his throne. Subscribe now so you don't miss the next incredible chapter of history.